Please subscribe to Blind Thoughts and press the bell icon so you never miss our next story. The bathroom steamed like a hidden jungle as rain hammered the roof in a relentless rhythm. Thunder cracked so close it made the pipes quiver. I twisted the shower knob off and let the last drops run down my arms, the air already heavy with the scent of pine soap and electricity. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend, just me and Lila at her family's lake house before our final college semester. They'd ducked into town for groceries, leaving me with nothing but the storm for company. A sharp clatter sliced through the steady roar of rain. My eyes shot to the door. Probably the wind, I told myself. Just the wind. Still, a knot of unease tightened in my chest. I wrapped a towel around me, pressed an ear to the door. Another sound, this time a slow creak of a floorboard from somewhere below. Lila. I called, my voice thin against the thunder. No answer. The old house seemed to hold its breath. I cracked the bathroom door. The hallway lay in dim gray light, the power out and lightning throwing jagged shadows across the walls. Hello. I tried again. Then a deep, familiar voice rose from downstairs. Ellie. You up there? Relief rushed through me so fast my knees almost gave way. Mr. Harrison. Yes. It's all right, he called. Storm blew a branch through the side door. I'm making sure the house is secure. I tightened my towel. I laughed nervously. Never mind. Stay put. I'll handle it. But another crash echoed from the back porch, louder and closer. Instinct overrode caution. I can help. I shouted down the staircase. Tell me what to do. There was a pause before his reply, steady but urgent. Flashlights in the hall closet. We need to check the windows before the wind gets worse. I reached for the closet handle, heart hammering. I'll do it, whatever you say, I whispered, the words barely audible over the storm. The flashlight's beam sliced the darkness as I crept downstairs, bare feet slapping cool wood. The living room smelled of wet pine and ozone. Mr. Harrison, David, I reminded myself, stood near the open side door, his rain-damp jacket glistening in the flashlight glow. The wind whipped a spray of rain into the house. Grab that chair, he said. We'll wedge it until I can nail it shut. I set the flashlight on a table and helped lift the heavy oak chair against the frame. The door groaned but held. My towel slipped, and I clutched it tighter. David glanced up just long enough to check that I was okay, his expression a mix of fatherly concern and focus on the task at hand. Good work. You all right? Fine, I said, though my pulse still thundered. Another boom shook the walls. Somewhere above, a window banged open. That'll be the attic dormer, he muttered. Come on. We climbed the narrow staircase, each step creaking in protest. The flashlight beam bounced across old family photos, smiling faces in summer sunlight, a stark contrast to the storm raging outside. At the attic door David paused. Stay behind me. I'm not scared, I said, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. Inside, the small dormer window flapped violently. Rain had already puddled across the floorboards. Together we wrestled it shut, the wind fighting every inch. When it finally latched, silence settled, thick, charged, almost holy. David exhaled. You saved me a climb. Thanks. I shrugged, suddenly aware of my damp hair clinging to my shoulders. Team effort. Lightning flashed, illuminating boxes of holiday decorations and decades of memories stacked in neat rows. In that moment the storm felt less like an enemy and more like a challenge we'd face together. The wind howled like an oncoming train as we climbed back down from the attic. I tightened my towel, trying not to shiver from the cold air rushing through the house. David kept the flashlight steady, his jaw set in concentration. A loud crack echoed from outside, followed by a thud that rattled the walls. "That wasn't just a branch," David said, heading toward the front hallway. I hurried after him. The beam of the flashlight flickered across family portraits and the worn oak banister as we descended the staircase. When we reached the front door, David pulled it open a cautious inch. A blast of rain lashed in, stinging my cheeks. Lightning illuminated a giant maple tree sprawled across the driveway like a fallen giant. "Oh no," I whispered. The tree had toppled completely, its trunk wedged against the porch railing. Beyond it, the gravel road that led to the main highway was blocked by a chaotic tangle of limbs. "That's our way out," David said grimly. "No one's getting through tonight." I swallowed hard. "So, we're stuck here." "Until morning at least," he replied, closing the door firmly. "We just need to ride it out." The house groaned as another gust slammed against the siding. I caught a flash of worry in David's eyes before he masked it with calm resolve. "Let's secure every window we can," he said. "Candles are in the kitchen drawer. You take the back rooms, I'll start here." I nodded, grateful for the task. Keeping busy was easier than thinking about being trapped. The back hallway smelled faintly of cedar and lake water. I checked each window, pushing stubborn frames shut and latching them tight. Candlelight danced on the walls as I moved from room to room, the storm's roar a constant presence beyond the glass. When I returned to the living room, David was kneeling by the fireplace, stacking kindling. The flicker of the candlelight caught in his rain-dark hair. "Good?" he asked. "All locked," I said. "You?" "Same." He struck a match and coaxed a small flame to life. Warmth spread quickly, and for a moment the house felt almost cozy despite the chaos outside. We sat on opposite ends of the sofa, the fire casting shadows that swayed with the wind. Rain battered the roof in relentless waves. "Thank you for helping," he said after a pause. "Most people would have just hidden upstairs." I smiled faintly. "I guess I'm not most people." He gave a quiet chuckle. "Clearly." The silence that followed wasn't awkward, just filled with the hum of the storm and the crackle of fire. I felt a strange steadiness settle inside me, like we were sharing more than just a house, we were sharing the challenge of the night itself. A sudden pop of electricity made me jump. Lights flickered, then died. "Breaker must have tripped," David said, standing quickly. "It's in the attic crawlspace. Narrow climb." I can do it," I said before he finished. "You've been running around since you got here." He hesitated. "It's cramped. And dark." "I'll do it, whatever you say," I repeated, the words coming out steadier than I felt. His eyes searched mine, then he handed me the flashlight. "All right. But I'll be right behind you." The attic air was colder, sharper. Shadows leapt across the rafters as we squeezed through the narrow door at the far end. I crawled first, the beam from the flashlight bouncing ahead. Dust tickled my throat. "There," David said softly, pointing toward a gray metal box wedged between beams. I opened the panel and found the tripped switch. My fingers trembled slightly as I flipped it back. A loud click followed by the low hum of returning power filled the small space. "Got it," I said, a thrill of relief washing over me. A thunderclap boomed so loudly the entire roof seemed to shudder. I gasped and nearly lost my balance, but David's steady hand caught my arm. "You're okay," he said, his voice calm in the darkness. I nodded, heart hammering. "Thanks." By the time we climbed down, the lights glowed softly throughout the house. The storm outside still raged, but something inside me had shifted. I felt stronger, braver. Back in the living room we settled near the fire again, watching the flames dance. Not bad for a storm team, David said with a small grin. Not bad at all, I agreed. For the first time that night, I let out a long, deep breath. Whatever the storm threw at us next, I knew we could handle it. The house had settled into a rhythm of wind and rain, the fireplace our quiet heartbeat. I stretched my legs toward the warmth and listened to the storm's constant music. David leaned back in the opposite chair, eyes reflecting the firelight. You remind me of my sister, he said after a while. She never backed down from a challenge either. What's she like? Lloyd's in Montana now, runs a rescue shelter for injured wildlife. Bears, eagles, you name it. I smiled. That sounds amazing. She always said storms bring out the truth in people, he continued. I used to think that was just something she said to sound wise. And now? He shrugged, a faint grin tugging at his lips. Maybe she's right. I hugged my knees, thinking of all the times I'd hidden from problems instead of facing them. I guess I've learned I can handle more than I thought. That was clear the moment you grabbed that flashlight, he said warmly. Most folks would have waited for someone else to fix things. A comfortable silence followed. The storm rumbled, but inside it felt almost peaceful. To pass the time, we traded stories. He told me about his first job as a lifeguard on this very lake, about racing storms to bring swimmers ashore. I shared how Lila and I met in freshman biology when we both dropped the same beaker and laughed until the professor glared. We laughed again now, the sound mingling with the crackle of burning logs. Hours blurred. The storm outside began to lose its fury, rain softening from a roar to a whisper. I checked the clock, nearly 3 a.m. You should get some rest, David said, noticing my yawn. Couch pulls out to a bed. What about you? I'll keep the fire going a bit longer. Old habits, make sure everything stays safe. I hesitated. We've made it this far together. Maybe we both stay awake a little longer. He chuckled. Fair enough. We sat quietly, listening to the storm's slow retreat. Through the window I caught a faint silver glimmer as the moon broke through thinning clouds. Sometime near dawn I must have dozed off. I woke to a softer world, the wind a gentle sigh, the rain a distant patter. The fire had burned low, casting amber light across the living room. David was at the window, watching the pale horizon. He turned when he heard me stir. Morning, he said quietly. Storm's moving east. We made it. I rubbed my eyes and smiled. We did. Outside, the fallen tree still blocked the driveway, but birds were already testing the new calm. A thin mist rose from the lake like a promise. Just then the crunch of tires on gravel startled us. A familiar SUV edged carefully around the tree's branches. Lila and her mom climbed out, umbrellas in hand, relief on their faces. Ellie. Lila ran to the porch, splashing through puddles. You okay? I stepped outside, cool air washing over me. Better than okay. It was an adventure. Her mom glanced at the tree and whistled. Looks like you two had quite a night. David and I exchanged a quick, knowing smile. Words weren't necessary. By mid-morning a crew from town arrived with chainsaws to clear the driveway. Lila chattered about their grocery store escapades, but my mind lingered on the night's quiet lessons, courage I didn't know I possessed, and the calm that comes from meeting fear head-on. Before I left, David tapped the porch railing and said softly, Thanks for everything, Ellie. You were steady when it mattered. So were you, I replied. I guess storms do show the truth. As the sun finally broke through the clouds, its light glittered across the lake like a fresh start. I breathed in the clean morning air, feeling stronger, braver, and strangely grateful for the wild night that had tested, and proved, me.